My wife betrayed me with my best friend in our own bed while I was away, and I watched it all through a baby monitor. Then I meticulously destroyed their lives in revenge. The static on the screen cleared, just for a second. It was a cheap baby monitor, one of those video ones we bought last week. We weren't even pregnant yet, but Chloe, my Chloe, was an obsessive planner. She wanted everything perfect for when it happened. "Let's test it out, Leo," she'd said, her voice full of that bubbly enthusiasm I'd fallen in love with. "We can point it at the living room from the nursery, just to check the signal strength." So we did, and then we forgot about it. I was the one who forgot, mostly. I was neck deep in quarterly reports for our investment firm, the one I'd built from the ground up with my best friend, Alex. Tonight, I was home early. A freak thunderstorm had knocked out the power grid downtown, shutting down our office building. I called Chloe, but it went straight to voicemail. I figured she was at yoga. I came into the quiet, dark apartment, the rain lashing against the windows. I made myself a drink, sat in my favorite leather chair, and for some reason, my eyes fell on the parent unit of the baby monitor sitting on the end table. I hadn't even realized it was on. The screen was mostly static, a fuzzy gray snow. I picked it up, ready to turn it off, when the image flickered into life. And my world ended. It wasn't pointed at the living room anymore. It was pointed at our bed. My bed. The signal was choppy, distorted, like a scene from a found-footage horror movie. But it was clear enough. Two bodies, tangled in our expensive Egyptian cotton sheets. One of them was Chloe. My Chloe. Her head was thrown back, her blonde hair a mess on my pillow. And the other person wasn't a stranger. It was Alex. My best friend since we were scrawny kids stealing apples from Old Man Hemlock's orchard. My business partner. The best man at my wedding. He was on top of her. The monitor had no sound, which was somehow worse. It was a silent movie of my own personal apocalypse. I saw her hand, the one with the wedding ring I'd spent 3 months' salary on, gripping his back. I saw the look on her face, an expression of raw, unbridled ecstasy I hadn't seen in years. Not with me. It wasn't the look of someone making a mistake. It was the look of someone who was exactly where she wanted to be. My heart didn't break. It just stopped. It was like my entire circulatory system was flash frozen. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The glass in my hand started to shake, the ice cubes clinking a frantic, tiny rhythm against the silence of the apartment. I watched for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Every movement, every silent gasp, every twist of their bodies was seared into my brain like a branding iron. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't a drunken mistake. This was practiced. Familiar. The way he moved, the way she responded, they knew each other's bodies. The thought hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. How long? How many times? How many late nights at the office was he not at the office? How many girls' nights out was she not with her girls? The fuzzy screen was a portal into the truth of my life. I was a prop, a convenience. My entire marriage, my deepest friendship, it was all a stage play, and I was the only one who didn't have the script. Something inside me shifted. The shock, the ice in my veins, it didn't melt into sadness or grief. It hardened. It crystallized into something cold, sharp, and heavy. It was rage, but a quiet, patient kind. The kind of rage a glacier feels as it slowly grinds a mountain down to dust. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to charge up the stairs and confront them. That's what they'd expect. A big, dramatic scene. Tears. Accusations. A satisfyingly explosive end to their little game. No, they didn't deserve a quick ending. They deserved to have their worlds dismantled, piece by piece, just like they had dismantled mine in front of my eyes on a cheap, static-filled screen. I carefully placed the whiskey glass on the table. My hand was perfectly steady now. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving with a precision I didn't know I possessed. I aimed the phone's camera at the monitor's screen, and I started recording. The quality was terrible. It was grainy, blurry, silent. But it was undeniable. I recorded a full minute of their betrayal. Then I saved the file, tucking it away in a secure folder in the cloud, a little digital hand grenade waiting for the right moment. Then I stood up, walked to the front door, and let myself out as quietly as I had come in. I walked back out into the lashing rain, my suit getting soaked through in seconds. I didn't feel the cold. I didn't feel the water running down my face. I just walked. And as I walked through the storm, a plan began to form. A plan not of loud, violent revenge, but of a slow, meticulous, and utterly devastating annihilation. They thought they were building a new life on the ruins of mine. They had no idea I was about to become the architect of their downfall. And I would build their prison with the very tools they had handed me. Their greed, their ambition, and their lies. The next few days were the performance of my life. I had to pretend that the world hadn't ended on a Tuesday night. I went home, hours later, feigning exhaustion from a long day at the office, which I claimed had its power restored late. Chloe was there, glowing. That's the only word for it. She was radiant, humming to herself as she made a late dinner. The smell of garlic and basil, smells that used to mean home, now turned my stomach. "Hey, babe," she said, turning to kiss me. Her lips were soft. I felt nothing but revulsion. I forced a smile. "Rough day. You have no idea," I said, the double meaning a private, bitter joke. She bought it completely. She chattered on about her day, about a new collaboration for her lifestyle blog, The Gilded Life, which was her pride and joy. It was all about curating an image of effortless wealth and taste. She had a respectable following, but she was desperate to break into the next tier, to become a real influencer. She talked about a potential sponsorship from a luxury brand, her eyes sparkling. Alex was saying he might be able to put in a good word. She mentioned, so casually, it was almost an art form. He knows the marketing director. I just nodded, my insides churning. That's great, honey. Seeing Alex at work the next morning was the real test. He clapped me on the shoulder, a big, phony grin on his face. Leo, my man, you look like you've seen a ghost. Just tired. Long night, I said, meeting his gaze. I searched his eyes for any flicker of guilt, any sign of the man I once knew. There was nothing. Just the same old charismatic, confident Alex. He was the face of our firm, a master at schmoozing clients and closing deals. I was the numbers guy, the strategist, the one who made the engine run while he polished the hood. We'd been the perfect team. Now I saw him for what he was, a parasite, feeding off my work, my life, my wife. Well, buck up, he said, leaning against my desk. We've got that big pitch with the Van Dorn account next week. This could be the one that puts us on the map for good. He was practically vibrating with energy, the same energy I'd seen on the monitor. This was the opening I needed. About that, I said, keeping my voice level. I've been running some new models. I think we're being too conservative. This got his attention. Alex loved risk, especially when it promised a big, flashy payoff. I was always the cautious one, the hand on the brake. I was thinking. I continued, pulling up a series of complex-looking charts on my screen. Charts I'd spent the entire previous night fabricating. What if we leveraged the Clarion Holdings portfolio? We could triple our proposed investment. The upside is astronomical. It's a bit of a maverick move, but if it pays off, I watched his eyes light up. Greed. It was so predictable. He didn't understand the deep mechanics of the market like I did. He just saw the big, shiny number at the end. He didn't see the house of cards I was building into the foundation of this proposal. Clarion Holdings was a bubble, a volatile tech stock pumped up on hype and speculation. It was going to pop. I knew it. The real data, the data I had hidden away, screamed it. But the data I was showing Alex? It told a story of a rocket ship about to take off. Leo, you magnificent bastard, he breathed, staring at the projected profits. This is brilliant. Why didn't you think of this sooner? Just needed a fresh perspective, I said, my voice deadpan. He spent the next hour talking about it, taking my idea and making it his own, spinning it into a grand narrative of his own genius. I'll handle the pitch, he declared. You've done the hard part, the numbers. I'll sell the dream. Perfect. He was attaching his name, his reputation, his very essence to this ticking time bomb, and I was going to hand him the detonator. Phase 1 of the plan was in motion, the professional annihilation of Alex. But that was only half of it. Chloe required a different approach. Her currency wasn't just money, it was image, social status, the adoration of her followers. I needed to poison that well, but not by attacking her directly. I needed to give her exactly what she wanted, and let her hang herself with it. A few nights later, I was scrolling through my old contacts. I stopped on a name, Julian Croft. Julian was an actor, a damn good one, but he'd never quite made it big. He had the looks, the charm, but not the luck. We'd been college roommates for a year. Last I heard, he was doing dinner theater in New Jersey and waiting tables to pay the rent. I made a call. Leo Vance. Is that really you? Julian's voice was as smooth and theatrical as ever. We caught up for a few minutes before I got to the point. Julian, I have a proposition for you. It's a role. The best role of your life. It pays well. Very well. I laid it all out. He would become Silas Blackwood, a reclusive, old-money European aristocrat looking to invest in new American lifestyle brands. He was to be sophisticated, enigmatic, and ridiculously wealthy. His target, Chloe's blog, The Gilded Life. You want me to seduce your wife? Julian asked, a note of caution in his voice. No, I corrected him. Nothing physical. I want you to seduce her ambition. Become her patron. Dangle the world in front of her. Private jets, exclusive parties, a feature in Vogue. Make her believe she's finally hit the big time, that she's leaving her small-time life behind for something truly elite. I would fund the entire charade. The rented penthouse, the designer suits, the black car service. Everything. Silas Blackwood would be utterly convincing. And the endgame? Julian asked. The endgame, I said, a cold smile touching my lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, is that you get her to invest. Not just her time, but her money. All of it. And then, Silas Blackwood disappears, along with every penny. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, a slow, deep chuckle. Leo, my friend, Julian said. You always were the clever one. When do I start? The next month was a masterclass in deception. On the surface, I was the supportive, if slightly distant, husband. I played the part of a man consumed by the biggest deal of his career, working late, poring over spreadsheets. It gave me the perfect cover to orchestrate my two-front war. Alex was completely hooked. He'd taken my fraudulent proposal and run with it. He was wining and dining the Van Dorn executives, selling them on his visionary, high-risk, high-reward strategy. He was so high on his own supply, he didn't even notice I was subtly altering the company's digital records, creating a meticulous paper trail that made the entire Clarion Holdings investment look like his sole initiative. I fabricated emails from him to me, rejecting my cautious advice. I created memos, signed with a forged digital signature, where he authorized the massive leveraging of our assets. By the time I was done, any auditor would conclude that Alex had gone rogue, drunk on ambition, and bet the entire company against the advice of his prudent partner. Meanwhile, Silas Blackwood made his grand entrance. He didn't just email Chloe. That would be too common. He had a courier deliver a single, long-stem black rose to our apartment with a heavy, cream-colored card. The card read, True elegance is not about being noticed. It is about being remembered. Your eye for it is remarkable. SB. Chloe was ecstatic. She spent hours trying to figure out who SB was. It was the mystery, the romance of it, that hooked her before they even met. 2 days later, an invitation arrived. An exclusive pop-up art gallery viewing. An event so secret, it wasn't even on the society pages. I watched her get ready that night. She was electric, trying on 3 different dresses, agonizing over her shoes. I have to look perfect, Leo. This could be huge. You look amazing, honey, I said, my voice a hollow echo. She kissed me goodbye, a quick peck on the cheek, her mind already a million miles away. Julian, as Silas, played his part to perfection. He was waiting for her at the gallery, which I'd rented out for the night, and filled with art from a local college and a handful of paid extras to act as guests. He was the epitome of old-world charm, kissing her hand, speaking in a faint, unplaceable European accent. He didn't shower her with compliments. Instead, he challenged her, critiqued her blog, told her she was playing a small game when she could own the whole casino. Chloe was utterly mesmerized. She came home that night walking on air. Leo, you won't believe it. He's incredible. He's talking about taking the gilded life global. He thinks I have the potential to be bigger than Goop. He wants to be my silent partner, my mentor. Over the next few weeks, Silas cultivated her. He took her to dinners at restaurants, so exclusive you needed a password to get a table. He arranged for a chance encounter with a C-list celebrity, another actor on my payroll, who gushed about being a fan of her blog. Every single experience was a carefully crafted illusion, designed to inflate her ego and her ambition until they were a giant, glittering bubble. The affair with Alex, I noticed, began to cool, not because of any guilt, but because Chloe had found a bigger fish. Alex, with his leased BMW and his talk of a single big score, was starting to look second-rate compared to Silas Blackwood and his world of limitless, effortless wealth. I'd see the frustration on Alex's face at the office. He was losing his grip on her, and it was driving him crazy. He became even more obsessed with closing the Van Dorn deal, as if that money was the only thing that could win her back. They were both my puppets, and they were dancing beautifully. Then came the first twist I hadn't planned for. Chloe sat me down one evening, her face uncharacteristically pale. She looked nervous, which was a change from her recent godlike confidence. Leo, I have something to tell you, she said, her hands twisting in her lap. My first thought was that she was going to confess, that the guilt had finally caught up with her. I was wrong. I'm pregnant, she whispered. The air left the room. For a split second, a tiny, stupid part of my heart lurched. This was what we'd wanted for years. But then the cold, hard reality crashed back in. I did the math in my head. The dates. The timing. I hadn't touched her, not really, in months. My performance as the loving husband had its limits. This baby wasn't mine. It was Alex's. I had to physically grip the arms of my chair to keep from reacting. I had to force my face into a mask of stunned, joyous disbelief. Pregnant? Chloe, that's incredible. I stood up and hugged her, my arms feeling like lead. I was holding my wife, who was carrying my best friend's child, and I had to pretend it was the happiest day of my life. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. This was the ultimate betrayal, a deeper cut than anything I'd seen on that monitor. And yet, as I held her, a new, darker layer of my plan began to form. This wasn't a setback. It was an opportunity. A glorious, terrible opportunity. Their perfect new life now had a symbol. A child conceived in deceit, who they would soon believe was going to be born into a world of unimaginable wealth and success. The fall would be so much harder now. They wouldn't just be falling alone. The pregnancy changed the dynamic completely. Alex was suddenly back in the picture, not as a lover, but as the concerned uncle. He and Chloe would have these hushed, intense conversations when they thought I wasn't looking. They were planning. They thought they were being so clever, deciding how and when to break the news to me, how to orchestrate the transition from their life with me to their new life together. They were waiting for the Van Dorn deal to close. Once Alex was flush with cash, they would make their move. They would tell me the truth, or some sanitized version of it, and expect me to crumble. Chloe, meanwhile, was even more invested in Silas's promises. A trust fund for the baby, private schools in Switzerland, a life she could only dream of. Silas, under my direction, became even more grandiose. He started talking about the final step to secure their global partnership. To play in the big leagues, my dear Chloe, Julian's smooth voice told her over a speakerphone call I was monitoring. We must show that we are serious. We need to consolidate our assets. I am liquidating a portion of my European portfolio. I need you to do the same. We will create a new joint entity, a holding company for the Gilded Life and its future ventures. It must be a significant investment, a sign of faith. He wanted $500,000. It was a staggering amount, but he had groomed her so perfectly that it seemed like a logical, even exciting, next step. He showed her forged bank statements, a portfolio of non-existent stocks, a whole universe of wealth that was just within her grasp. The problem was, Chloe didn't have that kind of money. Her blog made a decent income, but nowhere near that. Her savings were modest, but I knew exactly where she would think to get it. She came to me a few days later, her performance even more cloying than usual. She talked about the baby, about our future, about securing a legacy for our family. Then she dropped it. Leo, I need a loan, she said. It's for the blog. A massive expansion opportunity. It's a sure thing, but I need some liquid capital to get in on the ground floor. How much? I asked, keeping my face a perfect blank. 500,000, she said, not meeting my eyes. She wanted me to give her $500,000 of my money, the money I had earned, The money I had planned for our future, for our child, so she could run away with my best friend after bilking a fake millionaire. The audacity was breathtaking. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay, just like that. You said it's a sure thing, I said with a shrug. I trust you. You're building a future for our family, right? I made the wire transfer that afternoon, moving the money from my personal account into hers. It was the most satisfying check I had ever written. I was paying for her ticket on the Titanic. The final pieces were falling into place. Alex was set to give the final Van Dorn presentation in 2 days. The next day, Chloe was scheduled to meet with Silas Blackwood's lawyers, 2 more actors in a rented office, to sign the final paperwork and wire her $500,000 into a shell corporation I had set up in the Cayman Islands. Everything was synchronized. The collapse would be total and simultaneous. The morning of the Van Dorn presentation, Alex was a mess of nerves and adrenaline. He was pacing the office in his best suit, practicing his lines. This is it, Leo. After today, everything changes. I know, I said. You've got this. Chloe sent me a text message around noon. The meeting is done. It's all official. Silas is a dream. Celebrating with champagne tonight. Wish you could be here. Hugs and kisses. The money was gone from her account. My $500,000 was now sitting safely in my offshore account, untraceable. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait. The call came at 4:15 p.m. It was from Robert Van Dorn himself. Alex was in the room, pouring himself a celebratory scotch, assuming the call was to congratulate him. I put it on speaker. Mr. Vance, Van Dorn's voice was ice. I've just had a team of forensic accountants go through the proposal your partner, Mr. Knight, presented to us. I don't know what kind of game you people are playing, but my company doesn't invest in fantasy novels. Alex froze, the glass halfway to his lips. The Clarion Holdings position is the most volatile, irresponsible asset I have seen in 20 years, Van Dorn continued, his voice rising with anger. It's a house of cards, a Ponzi scheme waiting to happen. The fact that your firm would leverage its entire capital on it is not just reckless, it's suicidal. We are not only passing on the deal, I am making it my personal mission to inform every financial institution in this city that Vance Knight Capital is a toxic and fraudulent enterprise. You can consider your reputation and your company finished. Do not contact me again. He hung up. The silence in the office was absolute. Alex stared at me, his face ashen. Well, what did he mean? The numbers, you ran the numbers. I did, I said, my voice calm. I leaned back in my chair. And the real numbers said Clarion was a dog. The numbers I showed you, well, they told a better story, didn't they? Understanding dawned on his face, slow and horrifying. You set me up. You have no idea, I said. I swiveled my monitor around to face him. On the screen was a live feed from a security camera I had installed in the ceiling. It showed a team of auditors, real ones this time, sent from the State Financial Regulatory Board, combing through our files. I made an anonymous tip this morning about a partner who was engaged in reckless, unauthorized trading and falsifying documents to mislead his colleague. All those memos, the emails where you ignored my advice, they're going to have a field day with those. He just stood there, speechless, as the foundations of his world turned to sand. But why, Leo? What? And then I told him. I didn't shout. I spoke in a low, even tone, describing a grainy, silent video on a baby monitor. I described the sight of him and my wife in my bed. His face crumbled. The arrogance, the confidence, it all drained away, leaving behind a pathetic, terrified little man. Leo, we were going to tell you. I know, I said. After the Van Dorn money came in. After you had a nice, soft landing pad built with my company's money. But you see, Alex, the thing about building on a faulty foundation is that everything eventually comes crashing down. As if on cue, the office door opened, and 2 uniformed police officers walked in, accompanied by a man in a suit who flashed a detective's badge. Alex Knight, the detective said, you're under arrest for securities fraud and embezzlement. They cuffed him. He didn't resist. He just kept staring at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. As they led him away, he was still whispering, why? I let him wonder. The professional annihilation was complete. Now for the personal one. I went home. The apartment was dark, except for a single lamp in the living room. Chloe was sitting on the sofa, a bottle of expensive champagne, unopened, on the coffee table beside her. She was staring at her phone, her face a mask of confusion and panic. His phone is off, she said, her voice trembling. Silas, his phone is disconnected. The law firm's number is out of service. The website for his company is gone. It's all gone. Yes, I said, walking over and loosening my tie. It is. She looked up at me, and for the first time, she saw the look in my eyes. The cold, hard calm. The absence of the gullible, loving husband she thought she knew. Leo, what's going on? What's going on, Chloe? I said, sitting in my leather chair, the same one I was in when my world ended. Is that Silas Blackwood never existed? What's going on is that the $500,000 you took from me to build a new life is now sitting in my bank account in a country that doesn't care about your problems. What's going on is that your dream of the gilded life is over. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. And Alex, I continued, savoring every word. Alex was just arrested. The company is finished. The Van Dorn deal, the one that was supposed to be his ticket to the big time, it was a bomb I built, and he was dumb enough to light the fuse. The color drained from her face, leaving it a waxy, sickly white. You knew? She whispered, the words barely audible. You knew about us? I didn't answer. Instead, I took out my phone, found the video file, and wirelessly cast it to the large television screen on the wall. The screen flickered to life. Grainy, silent, horrifyingly familiar. She let out a sound, a choked, guttural sob, as she watched herself on the screen. She saw what I saw. The betrayal, in all its silent, ugly glory. The baby, she gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. You knew about the baby, too. Oh, I know it's not mine, if that's what you mean, I said. And I know that the life of luxury you promised it is gone. You have nothing, Chloe. The blog is a joke. Your patron was a fiction. Your lover is on his way to prison. And your husband. Well, your husband is the man who just took everything from you, just like you tried to take everything from him. She started to cry then, horrible, racking sobs of despair. She tried to plead, to explain. The words tumbled out. It was a mistake. I was confused. I love you. All the pathetic, empty lies people tell when they've been caught. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt empty. A vast, clean, and quiet emptiness. The storm was over. You have 1 hour to pack a bag and get out of my apartment, I said, my voice flat. Anything you leave behind will be thrown in the trash. Your lawyer can contact my lawyer about the divorce. There will be no spousal support. I have more than enough evidence of adultery and fraud to ensure that. You're on your own. I stood up and walked towards the bedroom. I stopped at the door and looked back at her, a crumpled, weeping mess on the sofa. She was the architect of her own destruction. I had simply drawn the blueprints. You wanted a gilded life, Chloe, I said. Turns out it was just gold-plated. And the plating has worn off. I closed the door, leaving her alone with the silent, looping image of her own betrayal on the screen. The aftermath was not a single explosion, but a long, slow decay for them, and a meticulous reconstruction for me. My revenge was never about a single moment of triumph, but about ensuring their ruin was as complete and enduring as their betrayal had been. Alex's case was a slam dunk. The paper trail I created was flawless. He was portrayed in the media as a charismatic con man, a millennial Icarus who'd flown too close to the sun on his partner's money. His attempts to blame me were laughed out of court. My testimony was calm, factual, and devastating. I was the stoic, betrayed partner who had uncovered the fraud just in time. He was sentenced to 7 to 10 years in a medium-security federal prison. The last I saw of him, he was being led out of the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his face hollowed out, the charismatic spark in his eyes extinguished forever. He had lost his career, his freedom, and the woman for whom he'd thrown it all away. Chloe's fall was quieter, but in many ways, more brutal. The society pages that had once tentatively celebrated her rise now delighted in her spectacular crash. Anonymous tips, all from me, of course, leaked through a proxy, filled the gossip columns. Stories of the fake aristocrat, the stolen money, the affair with her husband's jailed business partner. The gilded life became a punchline. Her followers deserted her in droves, leaving behind a torrent of vicious comments. Her brand, her identity, was not just destroyed, it was turned into an object of public ridicule. She tried to fight the divorce, but it was hopeless. The video, combined with the evidence of her conspiracy to defraud me of $500,000, left her with nothing. No alimony, no settlement. She walked away with a single suitcase and the clothes on her back. Her parents, ashamed and horrified, offered her a place to stay but little sympathy. She was a pariah. She had the baby, a little boy named Thomas. I never saw him. He was the one truly innocent party in the whole sordid affair, and for his sake, I felt a pang of something that might have been sorrow. But he was her responsibility, the living symbol of her choices. Months turned into years. I liquidated what was left of Vance Knight Capital, paid off the debts, and used my own capital, the money I had protected and the $500,000 I had clawed back, to start a new, smaller, and much smarter consulting firm on my own. I built it slowly, on a foundation of integrity and caution. My reputation, far from being tarnished, was enhanced. I was seen as the survivor, the smart money man who had weathered a storm of betrayal. Success came back, this time on my own terms. I didn't date. I worked. I healed. I learned to trust the silence of my apartment again. The ghosts of Chloe and Alex faded, their power over me diminishing until they were just characters in a story I no longer told. Then, about 3 years after the divorce, I saw her. I was in a 24-hour diner on the edge of town at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep after a long flight back from a business trip in Asia. And there she was. She was a waitress. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, greasy ponytail. Her face was pale and tired, etched with fine lines of stress that hadn't been there before. Her uniform was ill-fitting, stained with coffee. She moved with a weary slump, her feet dragging as she refilled salt shakers. She didn't see me. I was just another anonymous customer in a corner booth. I watched her for a few minutes. This was the woman who had dreamed of private jets and features in Vogue. The woman who had looked down on my stable, comfortable life as something provincial and small. Now she was serving lukewarm coffee to truck drivers for minimum wage plus tips. I felt a sudden, final plot twist inside my own soul. I had expected to feel a surge of triumph, a final, satisfying confirmation of my victory. I'd imagined this moment, in some dark corner of my mind, as the ultimate validation. But I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, no pity, just a profound and utter disconnect. The woman clearing away dirty plates was a stranger. The life she was living had no bearing on mine. My elaborate, all-consuming revenge had worked perfectly. It had brought her to this exact point. And in the end, it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that I was free. My revenge hadn't just destroyed them. It had cauterized a wound inside of me. It was a painful, brutal surgery, but it had cut the cancer out. Watching her in that diner, I realized the revenge was never truly about her or Alex. It was about me. It was about me taking back control. It was about me proving to myself that I was not a victim, but the master of my own fate. And now that it was done, the entire chapter was meaningless. I left a $50 bill on the table for a $10 check and walked out without her ever knowing I was there. I never looked back. A few more years passed. My new firm flourished. I eventually met someone. Sarah. She was a landscape architect, a woman who created beauty out of dirt and chaos. She was quiet, funny, and fiercely honest. Our relationship was built slowly, cautiously, on a foundation of shared values and mutual respect, not on grand, hollow promises. We bought a house in the country, with a big garden for her and a quiet study for me. One day, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from a town in the Midwest I'd never heard of. The handwriting was vaguely familiar. It was from Chloe. It wasn't a plea for money or forgiveness. It was short, just a few paragraphs. She wrote that her son, Thomas, was a good kid, bright and happy. She said she was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic and taking night classes in bookkeeping. She wrote that for a long time, she had hated me, blamed me for everything. But she had come to realize that I had only been a mirror, reflecting her own ugliness back at her. The last line of the letter was the one that stuck with me. You didn't destroy my life, Leo. You just forced me to start living a real one. I hope you are happy. You deserve to be. It was a strange kind of peace offering, one I never expected. It was an admission not of guilt, but of consequence. She had finally accepted the reality she had created. I never heard anything about Alex again. I assume he served his time and faded into the anonymity he deserved. Sometimes, late at night, when Sarah is asleep beside me and the house is quiet, I think about that grainy, silent image on the baby monitor. I think about the man I was, the man whose world was shattered in that single moment. And I think about the man I became in the aftermath, the cold, calculating architect of ruin. He feels like a stranger to me now, too, a character I once played in a very dark and complicated drama. My revenge was a success. It was total, it was devastating, and it achieved everything I set out to do. But the greatest victory wasn't their downfall. It was the moment I saw Chloe in that diner and felt nothing. It was the moment I could read her letter and feel a sense of distant closure instead of renewed anger. The greatest victory was that I had walked through the fire and come out the other side, not just unscathed, but remade. They had tried to burn my world down, and instead, they had only succeeded in burning away the parts of my life that were never real to begin with. They left me with the ashes, and from those ashes, I built an empire that was truly my own. And in the quiet peace of that new world, I finally found what they had stolen from me, myself.